Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie. Today I want to talk about Mars moving into Leo. On May the 20th, 2023, Mars moves out of Cancer and into Leo, and it stays in Leo until July the 10th, 2023. So you can see that Mars doesn't stay in Leo for too long. It's not like Jupiter moving through a sign, or Saturn, where Jupiter can stay in a sign for over a year, as we saw when I talked about Jupiter's movement into Taurus. Saturn can stay in a sign for 3 years or something like that. Pluto can stay in a sign for 10 years, 15 years. It can stay a huge amount of time in a sign. So Mars in Leo is quite quick. Nonetheless, it does mean something. So through the early summer, we're going to feel this Mars in Leo energy. So what's it about? Mars is the planet of assertion. It's a planet of anger. It's a planet of aggression. And so it is going to be coloured by the sign it is in. So when Mars is in Leo, which is a fiery sign, Mars can be quite arrogant. So it's going to be a time, I think, when a lot of people are going to have a very high opinion of themselves. And they might even be a bit vain. Leo can be quite a vain sign. So people are going to be very focused on what they look like, and they might not take kindly to criticism. I mean, Leo as a sign does sometimes have a certain fragility. So if someone's made a real effort to look good, it's not a good idea to suggest otherwise. I mean, I think that Mars in Leo is not brilliant. I don't think Leo is the best sign for Mars. The reason being that Mars is an assertive sign, yes, but it needs a bit of room, and Leo is fixed, and it's just too focused on itself. So Mars may get stuck. Mars in Leo is about a time where people cannot accept that they're wrong. They can be very stubborn and very angry when faced with alternative views. So that is certainly something to consider. Now, as far as this video is concerned, what I'm doing now is I'm just giving you the general picture of Mars in Leo and how it might generally affect the world. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through the 12 signs to just very quickly give you an indication of what it might mean for Mars to be going through your star sign, all things being equal. Then I'm going to look at some people who have got Mars in Leo, celebrities, famous people, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to be more specific. I'm going to look at the chart for when Mars goes into Leo, and I'm going to make some suggestions about why this might be important. Now, as far as the 12 signs are concerned, let's do it. Aries. Over the next 6-7 weeks, you're going to be very creative, and you can create some amazing things, but consider the possibility that you haven't got all the answers. Taurus. Your home could be a problem. This is because Mars is moving through the solar house in your chart, the solar house connected with the home. And so you might spend too much time at home, or you might have arguments perhaps with your family. So maybe you shouldn't spend too much time in your domestic environment, because otherwise trouble might brew. Gemini, you've got lots of things to say and you can assertively put forward your point of view. Cancer, like it or not, money is going to be important. And where there's money, there's a possibility of an argument. Virgo, you have strong feelings, it's true, but it may be difficult to get them out into the open. Perhaps you're going to feel angry and feel there's no way to get this anger out. So perhaps you should respond to the situation by getting involved in an exercise program, or maybe some meditation. Libra, your friends are important, and amongst your many friends, one of your friends, I think quite an assertive person, is going to have a powerful influence on you. Scorpio, I think the next 6-7 weeks are going to be great, especially in terms of work and career. You can establish your presence and it will be quite clear to everyone that you really know what you're doing. Sagittarius, you're not happy with the way things are and you want to push things further. Maybe you'll put your energy into travel or religion or something like that. However, think before you act, and if you're involved with new people, don't assume that what you say won't cause offence. Capricorn, you're in quite an introspective mood, all things being equal, over the next 6-7 weeks, and you're not going to want to reveal your true feelings. But some things you find out, perhaps related to the fine detail, perhaps relating to financial detail, could make you angry. Aquarius, Mars is moving through Leo, your opposite sign. Relationships can't be avoided, but you may come across someone and really disagree with them. And so I do think there's a danger that as the summer progresses, you might get yourself involved in a situation which leads to some serious arguments. And finally, Pisces. Well, be careful how you go, because Mars is moving through a part of your solar chart connected with health and well-being. If you overdo it, you could hurt yourself. On the other hand, now might be a good time to put your energy into making yourself fitter and healthier. So, those are the 12 signs. Bear in mind that it's very general and there's all sorts of other things to consider. Now, as far as a few celebrities with and famous people and infamous people who've got their Mars in Leo, let's see who we can find. Now, to give you some examples, now a few days ago I talked about Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group, who's trying to capture Bakhmut from the Ukrainians. He has Mars in Leo, and if you look at his pronouncements, he really does have a high opinion of himself. He's always putting himself and his men first, and it seems that the Russian Defense Ministry is getting really annoyed with him. You know, that is typical Mars in Leo. Who else? We've got, it's not on the list here, but I think that Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney, the two of the two surviving Beatles, they both have their Mars in Leo. Another person who had her Mars in Leo, a really infamous person, if you're British, you'll know who she is Mara Hindley. Mara Hindley, she's dead now, was a child murderer, and she was involved when she and her boyfriend Ian Brady, they killed some children in I think in Yorkshire and on the moors in the early mid-60s, and she had her Mars in Leo. She was also a Cancerian, the dark destroying mother. So yes, so she had Mars in Leo. So that goes, that may say something about the kind of man she hung out with. I mean, Ian Brady was he was a Capricorn, but maybe from her perception, she got involved with a man who had a high opinion of himself, Mars in Leo. So that's another person with Mars in Leo. Now, in terms of the Ukraine, Zelensky has Mars in Leo, and I think this is important. So, the moment Mars goes into Leo, it's going to hit his Leo, his Mars. So there's Zelensky's chart, and there's his Mars. His Mars is at 0 degrees 15 minutes Leo. So the next few days, as Mars goes into Leo, it could be quite a tense time for him. Not least because he already has Pluto opposition his Mars, because Pluto's gone into Aquarius. Pluto's retrograde at the beginning of Aquarius. So that means Zelensky has got Mars opposition his Pluto anyway. He is under a lot of pressure. Well, okay, he's obviously under a lot of pressure. That's stating the obvious. You don't need to be an astrologer to tell that. But with Mars moving into Leo, that could represent some kind of an event which represents the pressure that he is under. I mean, he's got his Mars return. If I was Zelensky's astrologer, I would be telling him not to be in the Ukraine at the moment. Not because Putin, the Russians, are trying to kill him, but because there's a lot of aggravation, conflict. I think, it's simply amongst the Ukrainians themselves. And he probably doesn't want to be around. He should probably go to Miami for the next week, or go to London, Paris. I mean, I know he's just come back from there, but this could be a very difficult time for him. And if you look at his chart, he has got Mars opposition the Sun and opposition Venus. So over the next week, Mars will move. He'll have his Mars return, so he's going to have Pluto opposition his Mars. Mars is going to trigger that. And then he's going to have Mars moving on to aspect his Sun and his Venus. So, yeah, I mean, look at Ukraine. Look at what's happening to Zelensky over the next week or two. We might not see anything. The Ukrainians are very good at hiding things. So whatever's going on with Zelensky, we might not see it. But I do think this is a time when he does have to be careful, and perhaps Ukraine has to be careful because, he is president of the Ukraine. So we are in a way looking at Ukraine's horoscope. If you take the view that the head of state is the country, as representative of the country, this sort of medieval idea of kingship, but the king is sort of God's appointed, representative, and he represents the country. Almost the body of the king is the country itself, and so this might reflect Ukraine's fortunes as well. So yeah, next few days. With that Mars return, indeed next week, it's could potentially cause a lot of damage and stress. So Mars moves on through the signs. Let's have another look at another person in the news. Janet Yellen. She is the United States' Treasury Secretary, and she is a Leo. And we can see that she's got Saturn at 1 degrees Leo, Mercury at 4 degrees Leo, she's got Sun at 20 degrees Leo. So Mars is crashing through all these planets over the next 7 weeks. So she is representative in some ways of the American economy. So one wonders what kind of pressures Janet Yellen is going to be under. Now, the opposite sign to Leo is Aquarius, and here we have Jerome Powell, the chair of the Federal Reserve, and there are his 2 Aquarius planets. And so as Mars moves through Leo, it's going to make an opposition to his Sun and opposition to his Mercury. So that is also something to consider. One other person I want to talk about is Zaluzhny. Now, to go back to the Ukraine, he is, I don't know, is he the commander-in-chief of Ukraine's land forces or something like that? Now, he is a Cancerian. I don't have his time of birth. I just have his date of birth. There he is. He's a Cancer, 16 Aquarius. But he has got his Mercury at 3 Leo, and his Venus at 9 Leo. So his Mercury is conjunct Zelensky's Mars. So I believe, and at least I think, that these 2 men probably don't get on with each other, and so he has to be careful with Mars going over Zaluzhny's Mercury. Over the next week, he could be really annoyed. Apparently he's disappeared, at least that's what I've heard, but that could put him under pressure. So anyway, those are a couple of people who are potentially going to be influenced by Mars going through Leo. Now, what we can do is we can actually set up a chart for Mars going into Leo. This is the precise moment that Mars goes into Leo. Mars is at 0 degrees, 0 minutes Leo. Now, I've set it for Kiev, but it could be anywhere. So that just gives us a picture of what happens when Mars moves into Leo. And as we've already discussed, Mars is opposition Pluto. Also, Mars is square Jupiter. So in the jargon, we've got this T-square, Mars opposition Pluto, square Jupiter. So that suggests a huge outflow of energy, and I think we would expect that as Mars goes into Leo. So Mars goes into Leo on the 20th, so the 20th, 21st, 22nd. That period could be really tense wherever you are, but I think that Zelensky is going to feel that tension because he's going to have Pluto and Mars, and there's Jupiter there as well. So that's one way of looking at it. I mean, I think that Mars is likely to cause the greatest, the greatest results, the most intense results at the beginning of the sign. I think as Mars goes through Leo, I'm not convinced that it's going to be quite so intense. But anyway, those are a few thoughts on Mars in Leo. Compared with Jupiter-Saturn, it's quite a quick transit. I think its biggest effects are likely to be at the beginning. But, those people I've talked about, not just Zelensky, but Janet Yellen could be affected by it. Jerome Powell, I don't know how they're going to be dealing with, the debt ceiling. That Mars is going to be affecting both of those people in a big way. And I suppose that's all the aggravation caused by the debt ceiling. Will Congress allow the debt ceiling to go up? And finding some compromise with Mars in Leo is going to be really difficult. I mean, Mars in Leo in general is not really about compromise. So if you have any situation where compromise is important, whether it's raising the debt ceiling, sorting out the war in Ukraine, bringing people to the negotiating table, it's not going to be easy. And I should say with Zelensky, the last time Mars was in Leo was in June. I think it was in June 2021, so it was 2 years ago. And at the time, Zelensky made a tweet talking about how he's looking forward, or words to the effect that, that he's looking forward to Ukraine joining NATO. Now, that at the time was a very provocative thing to say, and that's another Mars in Leo thing. So we already know 2 years ago that Zelensky made a tweet which was quite confrontational. So I don't know what's going to happen over the next couple of days. So those are some thoughts on Mars and Leo, but it's Mars is a fast-moving planet, and before you know it, Mars will be out of Leo and into Virgo. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say on the subject of Mars in Leo, and I will talk to you again very soon.